Hey guys, welcome to another video. Now in this video, it's all about the cost breakdown of my 3-month trip. So I'm going to go through month by month and tell you just how much I spent on these different things for the last 3 amazing months. As I've mentioned before, this was one of my biggest trips. So it was big in terms of, the expenses, in terms of the length of time, how many countries and how many different places. With such a trip, you can expect that, you'd have to spend quite some euros. And that's exactly what happened. Now, my estimations were like 5,000 to 6,000 euros. And just before this video, I actually just calculated everything. And yeah, it was more than that. And I'll tell you all about that. I use an app called Moneyfy to pretty much manage all my expenses. Not just like for travel expenses, but expenses in general. It's like more or less my financial planning app. It gives me a nice interface of like all my expenses and stuff. And this made it like so easy for me to like actually go through and see how much I spent on these different things. So in July was the start of the trip. And the first flight was of course from Germany to Mexico. That was just like 380 euros. Interestingly, July was also the month with a lot of expenses, or probably even the most expenses. The thing is, for two weeks I was actually in United States, and there we did a road trip from New York to California and back to New York. That definitely wasn't cheap because then, it's a massive country. And driving across it, it was more than 12,000 kilometers. So you can just imagine just how much we had to spend, for example, on gas and then accommodation and food. The interesting thing, I think at every rest stop, we kind of bought food, I think. With that, transport, especially for the gas and for the rental car, was 925 euros. So we had to rent the car, and that was already like 1,000 euros, and then gas as well, and then all of this was split for 3 people. So, and then hotel was another 534 euros. Eating out was a 480 euros. In this month, I only had additional flights, would have been to fly to the States, and that was actually just 111 euros from El Salvador. Oh, there was also like different entry fees and for parks and attractions and so on. That was another 177 euros. Apart from these expenses, then of course Corona was another thing. So for some countries, I had to do Corona tests. For the Corona tests, then I had to pay like 38 euros. And food for the entire month of July, well, food in terms of going to the supermarket and buying food, I have here as 67 euros. Within July, I was also in Mexico and Guatemala. So these 2 countries combined were like significantly cheaper than how much I spent in the States. So for just July, I spent 2,545 euros. That was a lot of money. I was surprised it was that much. I knew it would have been at least maybe 1,500, but yeah. So in this month it was El Salvador, and then I went over to Honduras, and then there was Nicaragua, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing one country. So I was making my way through Central America. And then it was also in August that I flew to South America. So from Costa Rica, then I flew all the way to Colombia. And then in Colombia, also from Bogota, flew to Cartagena, spent a weekend there and then back. And then there were some other flights. In comparison to like the previous month where the distribution changed a bit. So for example, the flights was pretty much double what I paid for July. So that was like 878 euros. Transportation was significantly reduced because I wasn't like paying for gas. It was just like public transport and taking buses and so on. That was just 152 euros. And accommodation was also pretty low in comparison to the previous month, so 233 euros. Eating out was pretty interestingly the same amount, 233 euros. So that's pretty much half the amount that I paid in the previous month. Like entry fees and stuff, that was just 80 euros. For the Corona tests, this time it jumped to like 103 euros because I had to pay for some of these countries. I had to do a PCR test, And yeah, PCR tests in some of these countries aren't that cheap, so that's why that kind of jumped there. A big contributor in August was my medical bill. So I was in the hospital for like one night and in the emergency room and all that stuff, and that bill came up to 466 euros. I got back that money like just last week actually, so that doesn't really matter, but if I didn't have insurance it would have been a different story. And food, I have 109 euros. So for August, then I started spending more money on like food from the supermarket, and I think I probably even cooked a few times as well. And apart from that, the other things like toiletries and even like souvenirs and gifts and so on. So that was another 50 euros. The expenses were like lesser in August. It was still more or less similar to the previous month, because in total it was 2,312 euros. So already, if you're calculating, that's 5,000 euros. I must say that's a lot of money. I was expecting like 5,000 euros would be sufficient for the 3 months. So in September, there was also a lot of flying. So first of all, I left Colombia in September, went to Peru, and from Peru, it was then over to Brazil. From Brazil, it was then back to Germany, and then from Germany, it was down to Zimbabwe, and then from Zimbabwe to South Africa, and then from South Africa back to Germany. You can expect, and it's understandable why I spent 1,281 euros for flights. I have 10 transactions for the month of September, which kind of equates to 10 different flights. Transportation was pretty much okay. It was like 270 euros. Accommodation went up like 358. And the main reason for this is that the places, especially in the last 2 weeks in Africa, most of those places were like lodges or they were like hotels, because there weren't that many options for hostels. Eating out also went up a bit. That was like 426 euros. Second highest was expense for September was like all these expenses for like entrances and activities. 697 euros, so pretty much 700 euros. Why that was so expensive, especially in Zimbabwe, it was filled with activities. The corona tests, that was like 136 euros. Food, I just spent like 48 euros, and the typical toiletries, that was like another 20 euros. So the total for September, 3,233 euros. Going over all the expenses in general, so like the flights, that was like 2,600 euros. Transportation, that was 1,400 euros. Accommodation, that was like 950 euros for the 3 months. Eating out, that was 1,100 euros. Activities, 954 euros. Corona tests, that was almost 300 euros. In terms of health and medical and all those stuff, that was 470 euros. Food was just 225, and there were like souvenirs and toiletries, then that would have been like another 70 euros. The total for these 3 months was 8,090 euros. That's a lot of money, I must admit, because if I was supposed to convert this to Jamaican dollars, this is like 1.5 million Jamaican dollars. And that was pretty much about my salary when I was working back in Jamaica for 1 year. I guess people will ask, okay, yeah, what's the point in spending so much money on a trip? There are so many other important things you could use this money on. You should, for example, save it. Like, that's the best thing and the most responsible thing. But I don't have any regrets doing this. Every time that I think about the trip, I get goosebumps every time. Because I had so many experiences. I learned so many different things. I saw old friends and family members, and I made new friends. And so many different things I saw in nature, the different experiences I had my first time doing certain things, trying different foods, you know, making a fool of myself, trying to speak Spanish and other languages, and, you know, even the crazy stories of almost getting robbed and all those different things. Like, there's just like a rush of stories, a rush of experiences, a rush of emotions. It's like So many things. I came back stronger, I came back fitter. I mean, walking around with like 20 kilograms like almost every day, you can expect to shed a few pounds, and that's exactly what happened because I lost like 6 kilograms and I was much stronger. So even like when I did the marathon like 2 weeks after coming back, like I was at top performance because of like the last 3 months. You can't put a price on things like those, and I mean, those are the things that I value the most, at least, like being healthy, achieving my goals in life and so on. Those 3 months helped me to do a lot of those things, helped me to achieve a lot of goals and to cross off a lot of things that I've always wanted to do. And for me, that's the most important thing. Spending that amount of money for all of those experiences is definitely worth it. I have videos, I have photos, but they don't begin to capture just how amazing the last 3 months were for me. Maybe it sounds weird for me to just talk about 8,000 euros like this, or I bet you 1.5 million Jamaican dollars, but it's because of how I look at money. For me, whenever it comes to spending money on experiences, I usually don't think a lot. In contrast to that, when it comes to buying material stuff, that's when I start thinking real hard, like new clothes, furniture and whatever stuff do I really need. Like, I really have to convince myself that, hey, okay, you really need this. Fly somewhere or to experience something new, to see a new place, or to do bungee jumping or skydiving. Like, I wouldn't even think that hard. I was like, okay, the money's on my account, I'm gonna do it. This trip has been on my list for years. My plan was always, after I'm finished with my studies, I'm going to take a trip. So that was always my plan. So I was always saving towards this. And apart from that, I also have a part-time job. So even while I was in all these different countries, I was still setting aside time to work so that I could actually pay some of these bills. One of my mottos in life is simply to collect memories and not things. Like, I will spend money so that I can have experiences. I will spend money so that I can create memories that I can tell my kids and my grandkids about the crazy times that it's easier for me to do that because I put more value on having experiences in comparison to just having things. Like clothes and like gadgets and like even furniture and all that type of stuff. It's like, it doesn't mean that much to me. At least the value that I put on it is like significantly lower than the value I put on like experiencing new things and exiting my comfort zone. In another video, I'll share with you the things that I learned in terms of how to travel cheaper. So maybe even to do this trip for half the cost. It's definitely possible. So you can look out for that soon. And yeah, see you in the next video.